Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this consumer YouTube channel. Today we are going to be speaking to John, who is going to tell us his story about the review that he wrote on our website and his experience with the company called GMC. Your likes, your shares, and your comments are always welcome. Please enjoy the video and stay tuned for more.
I bought a 2007 GMC Yukon a couple of years ago. Almost immediately after purchasing it, I started getting letters from GM and the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, called NHTSA, pertaining to the Takata airbag recall, which my serial number matched exactly with the recall. So I tried to contact the local dealerships in the Nashua, New Hampshire area, and was told, well, we don't have anybody available that can handle the recall. You'll have to come back later. So after a couple of times of going to a particular local dealer, actually by the name of Tully Automotive Nashua, instead of continually going up there, I started making phone calls rather than wasting my time. And I was given excuses of, well, we don't have anybody on staff that's qualified to do recall work, or we don't have time to do the recalls right now, or the parts are not available at this point. And the last conversation was, GM is appealing the recalls, so we don't have to do recalls because they're not an active recall. Even though I had the letters from GM and NHTSA showing that my vehicle needed to be repaired. So last April, about 9 o'clock one night, my wife and I were driving home, and we hit a rather large deer that destroyed the front driver's side of my truck, my Yukon. Took out the entire headlight, destroyed the fender, ruined the grill, and immediately all the lights on the dashboard started flashing, airbags deployed, airbags deployed. None of the airbags went off. That scared the living daylights out of us. Luckily, at that point, neither one of us had gotten hurt because we always wear the seatbelts anyways. So it took about half an hour, 45 minutes for the police department to get out there. And they did all the reports and stuff. And they asked me if the airbags went off, and I said no. And I says, but I showed them where the dash lights had all gone on. And they said, well, is it drivable? And I said, it seems to be. So they said, if you're going to drive it home, you might want to pull the fuse on the airbags, because if your dashboard lights are saying the airbags were triggered, they were a little bit concerned that it may be a delayed reaction, that they could still go off if I was driving the truck home. So I did what they suggested, and I pulled the fuse off of the airbags. So I contacted my insurance company, and they said, take it to a local, shop to get fixed. And they recommended a shop in Nashua, Gate City Body Shop. So I took it over to them. They in turn did their inspection and said, this is what we believe it needs. They wrote up a quote. The insurance company sent their adjuster over to Gate City. They agreed with the quote. And so Gate City started tearing it down. In the process of tearing it down, Gate City realized some of the issues with the airbags. Because the airbags had not deployed, Gate City was getting nervous about, if all of the indicators say the airbags had fired, but they haven't fired, Gate City said, we cannot safely continue working to fix your car unless the airbag situation is addressed. So they called the insurance company, which was Alstate, and said, we're going to have to update the original estimate to include the airbags, the seatbelt controllers, and so forth. So Alstate sent somebody down and said, nope, we're not going to cover the airbags. We're not going to cover half of what the damage is, because the airbags not deploying is not our fault. It's a GM recall fault. And so everything was put on hold. Several months went by, and finally GM sent one of their investigators or inspectors up to look at my truck. And I spent close to 4 hours sitting in the parking lot of Gate City Auto Body while the GM inspector went through my truck, read all the computer manual readouts and stuff on the computer, and she looked at me and she said, according to this, the airbags should have fired. There was a failure in your system. She said, we can't tell exactly what the cause is, but obviously it had something to do with the accident that damaged the controllers. So that information was sent up to Allstate. Allstate turned around and said, well, we don't believe that your airbags not firing had anything to do with the accident because of the recall, so we're not going to pay to repair your truck. So I was talking with Gate City about it, and they suggested I contact GM. So I contacted GM directly, and they said, well, we can't confirm whether the accident damaged the controller and that's why they didn't fire, or if it's the recall problem that caused it to not fire. So we're not going to do anything to repair your truck. So at this point, I've got a $30,000 paperweight that number one, the body shop refused to repair because if they do the repairs, they become liable if something happens when I take it back on the road, such as the airbags arbitrarily blowing up going down the road for no reason. And I can understand that 100%. So I ended up calling the state of New Hampshire Attorney General's office. They sent a letter to GM, and GM sent a letter back to them exonerating themselves from the situation. And so at this point, I've got a truck that it's unsafe to take on the road. The airbag recall has never been done. I ended up having to buy a different vehicle to get around with in the course of all of this. So I've got a $30,000 paperweight sitting in a storage yard that I can't do anything with. The value of the vehicle as far as trade-in is zero because of the recall. So my Yukon is totally useless. It's worth nothing, not even in trade-in value, because of the airbag recall not being performed. Alstate Insurance bailed out on me. GM has ignored the situation. And I've continued to do some checking with the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. And although GM had in fact filed several appeals to cancel the recall, the appeals were denied. So GM is still, by regulation, required to do this recall on the vehicle, which they're totally refusing to do across the board. So I've got a situation of, I've got a vehicle that I spent a lot of money on that I can't do anything with and I can't use and I can't trade it. It's not worth anything anymore. So what am I supposed to do?
Well, thank you. Thank you for your story, John. And I'm very sorry that you got yourself, that you're finding yourself in this predicament because of the company. Now, you mentioned that your truck, your Yukon, its face value, or at least what it was worth, is $30,000. Is that correct?
Replacement on the vehicle would be about $30,000 because of the mileage and stuff. When the accident happened, I looked up the value of it. It would, depending on what book you looked at, it was anywhere from $16,000 to $18,000.
During the interaction with the representatives of GM, did they offer any solution? Did they try to, I don't know, understand your situation? Did they try to do anything for you?
Absolutely not. In fact, when I was talking with the people from GM, including the representative that was doing the inspection of my vehicle, I told them, and even the body shop said, if you will at least just supply us with the repair parts for the airbags and the controllers, we can fix the truck. GM refused to even supply the parts for somebody else to do the recall. And it wouldn't have cost GM a penny other than to just supply us with the parts. And this is what's so absurd. They are endangering my life and the lives of every other driver on the road that's got a GM vehicle, and every other driver anyways. Think about it. If I'm going down the highway at 65 miles an hour and for no reason my airbags blow up my face, I can't see what's going on, it could be a multiple fatality crash just because GM was so arrogant as to not even supply the parts to fix what they know as a problem. There is one additional part of this that doesn't necessarily play into GM's responsibility, but everybody, I'm sure, sees on TV If you had a problem with your airbags not deploying, yada, 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 call us right away. We'll get you involved in a class action lawsuit, so forth and so on. Elena, this is no joke. I have talked to more than 24 legal firms across the United States, and not a single one of them will take this case. Why? Because nobody was killed or seriously injured in the crash. So basically, I have to get hurt, or somebody has to get seriously hurt, killed, or whatever, before any of the lawyers will pick this up. So basically, $30,000 paperweight that I can't do a darn thing with.
What if we imagine the situation where the company finally came to their senses and decided to do something for you, to do something for John? And I know that the conflicts, this has been going on for quite some time. But if right now, today or tomorrow, they could have done something to remedy your situation, is there anything they can do right this second to help you? What would that be?
Well, to be honest, because of their refusal to honor the recall as it is right now and putting us all in danger, I honestly don't trust GM to the point that I will not drive another GM vehicle ever. So the best that is going to turn out from them is they can turn around and give me $20,000, take this pile of junk off my hands, and I'll put it towards the payments on my other vehicle. I do not trust GM. In fact, within our family, we had another problem with a GM vehicle this past week. It's a brand new vehicle. It's 2 years old. It doesn't have 45,000 miles on it. And the brake booster for the vacuum brake system, the power brakes, the booster system blew out, stopped functioning. So he almost lost brake control. It is a known problem because we looked it up. It's a problem that GM knows about, and they've got remedies for it, but they refuse to warranty it and take care of it as a safety issue. So GM, to me, does not care about the safety of the general public, does not care about their customers or consumers. They're all about putting money in their own pocket. I'm not going to deal with a company like that. And I'm telling all my personal friends, business associates, don't ever buy another GM vehicle.
Why did you decide to go public? It is understandable that you're very upset, yet it takes some purpose, it takes some particular goal to write a review on the online platform. Why did you decide to do it, if you don't mind my asking?
It basically comes down to not only me and my family's personal safety, but public safety. I spent a number of years operating and managing ambulances, so I went to an awful lot of car crashes. And this type of situation should not happen. There is a national recall on this vehicle. The manufacturer is refusing to abide by the recall. But even worse, National Highway Transportation Safety Administration is refusing to enforce it. The states are refusing to enforce it. So we've got some technically dangerous vehicles on the road that nobody gives a darn about. And when I look about things like that, I've got 4 grandkids. My wife has got 2 grandkids. When I think about something like this, I'm thinking about my grandkids being in the car that something like this happens to, or they get hit because somebody else's airbags went off and they lost control of their car. So it's not just a matter of, yeah, certainly I'm out a lot of money right now, but the public safety of everybody on the American highways right now sits in a very dangerous balance because of GM refusing to produce and create safe vehicles for the general public. And none of the administrations, whether it be federal or local, none of the governments are willing to do anything to protect the people.